Hi, this is Jeff Curto, and welcome to episode number 27 of Camera Position, the podcast about the creative side of photography. Well, for today's podcast, I want to take time to talk about machinery. Now, I know that my concept here for Camera Position, and I know that one of the reasons that many of you are listening is that we're not really talking about technology in this podcast. I'm really trying to talk about the visual aspects of the medium. And yet, here we are, we photographers, stuck with a medium that uses machinery and uses technology. And we can't escape that. And we can't escape the fact that that technology will tend to direct us in certain ways relative to our photographic endeavors. And certainly the kind of photographs that I've been featuring in Camera Position, the photographs that I've made, the majority of the work that I've done over the last 20 years or so has been with a large format camera, has been in black and white for the most part. And it's important to note, though, that some of what that is about has to do with the way in which I work. And the fact that I'm using that large format camera in some ways helps dictate the kinds of subjects that I might photograph. Which is why every once in a while I'll use a different camera. Now, here is a photograph that I made at the Rialto Market in the beautiful city of Venice. And I made it with my Hasselblad medium format camera. You shoots a square 6 by 6 centimeter negative. And what I did this particular day is I had the Hasselblad, I mounted it on a tripod and set the shutter speed fairly slow and worked with the idea of motion and some marvelous reflections of color and shooting with color negative film instead of black and white as I normally do. And so I got this photograph with that combination of camera and film and made quite a lot of photographs, quite a large number of them. In fact, made several rolls of photographs of what was going on in this marketplace. And there were some awnings around the edge of the this covered section of the market, and the awnings were reflecting or were casting red light, green light into the space, and that was reflecting off of the wet ground that was wet from the melting ice that was keeping, in this case, the fish and other seafood fresh, or at least, keeping it refrigerated. And so I went around and made a lot of photographs and took advantage of this blurred motion from slow shutter speeds. But more importantly, I took advantage of the fact that the camera itself was so much more mobile than what I'm used to with my large format 4 by 5 inch camera. And I made a large number of photographs in a much shorter period of time than I would with my 4 by 5 camera. And I also took a great deal more, I don't really know if risk is really the right word, but I took more photographic chances, tried things that might not work, that I tend not to do with the large format camera, that contemplative approach of thinking through the subject and thinking through the way in which the subject is going to look, and that sort of pre-visualization of the final print, and thinking about the tonal values and so forth and so on. With this photograph or set of photographs, what I was up to was making a variety of things. Ultimately, the way I presented this image was as a triptych, and three separate photographs, each printed quite large, 40 by 40 inches, and then sort of framed in a frameless kind of fashion so that there's no mat or anything, and then hung on the wall the way you see it here in this part of the enhanced podcast. So you see three images. And in fact, what I had to do was the left-hand image, in order to make this composition of these three images all together work, is I had to take that left-hand image and flop it so that what was on the left was on the right and what was on the right was on the left, because otherwise the composition in this triptych or three image sequence really didn't quite work. So I'm kind of manipulating the idea of the way the scene really looked, and I don't have any problem with that. I know that there are some photographers who would probably say, well, that's not the way it was, and I'm not really about that. I'm about trying to make the photograph work in some way. So ultimately, what I wound up with here was this triptych of this sort of vibrant life of this marketplace, and that really is so different from the kind of work that I had been doing prior to making these photographs. In fact, earlier in the day, this particular day, I had made a number of photographs with the 4x5 camera. So here, making these photographs with the medium format camera, being more mobile, being more of a risk taker, trying some different kinds of things with the work that I'm doing, that part is based on the machinery. And so if you find yourself sort of stuck photographically and things aren't quite working out for you, try a change of, sort of a change of photographic venue by trying a different piece of machinery. Try a pinhole camera, try a plastic toy camera, try a disposable camera. Try anything that you can think of that will change up the way in which you work. And what I've found in doing this kind of photography is that there is a real freeing up that occurs when you do this kind of sort of changing of pace that I think is really quite wonderful and really helps, I think, certainly helps me change the way I think about what I'm doing. So technology is a part of our lives in photography. We have to deal with it. We don't have any choice in the matter. We simply must deal with the way in which photography impacts the technology, underlying technology of photography, impacts the way we work as photographers. So recognize the fact that that lens that you might have been using for the last 6 months, 8 months, 2 years, might be making you see in a certain way, or that particular camera might be changing the way you stand in the scene in a certain way that forces you into a corner, as it were. So the idea of technology and machinery and how we see is an important part of the way photography works. Well, thanks for listening to Camera Position. I appreciate those of you who have subscribed and those of you who continue to send comments and so forth. Very much appreciative of those things. And invite some friends along for the ride. Send the URL for cameraposition.com to a friend or two and let them know that you're finding something useful here, if in fact you are, and I hope you are. So thanks again for listening to Camera Position, the podcast about the creative side of photography. We'll see you next time.